I built an inventory app for a client, and this was the hardest part. You think building an inventory app is simple, like just track items in, items out, right? That's honestly what I thought going into this. And I've been a software developer for years now, built different systems, worked on different apps, so I didn't expect this thing to actually slow me down. But it did. Because the real problem wasn't inventory, it was profit. And that sounds obvious, but it's actually not when you're building something like this. Vendors just don't sell items. They deal with booth fees, payment processing fees, leftover inventory, different prices depending on events, and all that can change profit a lot. So for example, let's just say a vendor buys an item for $5 and sells it for 10. On paper, we're green, baby. That's $5 profit. Simple, right? But then you start adding the real world stuff. Let's say they paid $100 for the booth that day. They're paying card fees, transaction fees, parking fees, travel, and maybe 20% of the inventory didn't even sell. Now suddenly, that $5 in the green doesn't look like profit anymore. And this is where it got interesting because my client actually thought that they were doing well. Like sales were good, they were busy, inventory was moving in and out. Everything looked fine on the surface. But when we actually broke everything down, the numbers told a completely different story. And from a dev perspective, this is where things got tricky because now we're not just tracking inventory. We're building a system that calculates real world profit. Not just how many items sold and pack up and we're done, but profit per event, profit per item, profit after fees, and profit after unsold items. And that adds a whole layer of complexity. And this is when I realized something. The hardest part is not coding, right? Because let's face it, we're not reinventing the wheel here. Like, yeah, it can get pretty tedious and, it can take a lot of time, but it's actually not the hard part. The hard part is figuring out what actually matters here. Like questions started popping up. How do we handle unsold inventory? Do you carry the cost to the next event? How do you track bundles or discounts? How do you even split the fees between events? They're just not coding problems. They're real world logical problems. And this is something I keep realizing after I keep building apps. So if you're building something, nobody really tells you this part. You go in thinking the hard part is coding, but it's not. Like I said, we have all sorts of tools now in 2026. The hardest part is understanding the problem deep enough to build the right solution. Honestly, this is why a lot of apps fail. Not because the developers are bad or the code is bad, but because the app sauce was good, but not what actually matters in real life. And that's something I'm focusing now. Building apps that actually reflect real world problems and not just nice to have. In other words, building apps that actually reflect real life, real people, real problems, and real solutions. Not just what looks good on paper.